Gronkowski would sit up here in comparison to Shadur Sanders, who did no such thing, and say, hey, thought he looked better. I got to give him the edge here. I thought it wasn't bad. A pick six and a fumble, and we can get over fumbles. Have you heard anybody say that? I know it's possible. Have you ever heard anybody say, get over?
Why is it even on your mind, bro? Like, why is that thought to even say that it's on your mind? Because I
just gave you the context.
Said, you know the circus that is around you every day, though. Like, you're at practice every day. Like, that was dumb to say that, bro. Because you know when you say that, how it can be taken. You can say, yeah.
You think he meant Shadur Sanders?
I don't think he meant it, but I think he should have chosen his words better. How about that?
But if he says I was talking about the media.
How about I think he just should have.
8 of his first 9 passes, threw a pick six, bad decision, but was later credited with a fumble on a botched handoff. After the game, he made some very, very interesting comments. He said, there are entertainers and there are competitors, and my job is to compete. Right. He tried to clarify later at the presser, saying he meant the media are the entertainers and a competitor, and he's a competitor, and he wasn't taking a shot at Shedeur.
When Dillon Gabriel stepped to the mic after his NFL preseason debut, he probably thought he was being clever, thought he was showing confidence. But the moment those words left his mouth, there are entertainers and there are competitors. Everything changed. He wasn't just making a statement. He was tossing gasoline into a media firestorm, and Shadur Sanders' name was written all over the smoke. Within hours, the internet lit up. Fans were furious. Commentators jumped in. But nobody hit harder than Stephen A. Smith. This wasn't debate. It was demolition. Stephen A. didn't just defend Shedeur. He pulled out the flamethrower, and what followed? A public takedown so cold-blooded, it turned Dillon Gabriel's NFL moment into a walking meme. And the real kicker? Shadur Sanders didn't even have to say a word. So how did one sentence unravel Dillon Gabriel's clean image? And why does this brutal call-out say way more about the future of football than you think? Let's break it down.
First, when you take a look at both of these QBs, who had the most impressive start so far in the preseason?
Well, to me, it was Shedeur. I didn't see any interceptions when he was out there. Didn't see anything like that. I mean, don't get me wrong. I don't think Dillon Gabriel did a bad job. I was impressed with the brother, but I'm going to go with Shedeur. The pressure was on him. The spotlight was on him. He showed up out on the field.
It all started with just one sentence, the kind of vague, under-the-radar line that could have slipped past most ears unnoticed. But not this time. After an up-and-down debut in the preseason, Dillon Gabriel took the mic for his post-game interview. When asked about the noise surrounding quarterbacks like Shadur Sanders, Gabriel paused, then dropped what sounded like a subtle jab wrapped in media polish. There are entertainers, and there are competitors. My job is to compete. On the surface, it sounds innocent, even motivational, but for anyone who follows football culture, especially those who know how coded that statement feels in today's game, it was anything but subtle. The internet caught it immediately. Fans started digging, analysts went off. Headlines started asking the question Gabriel hoped to avoid. Was that a shot at Shadur Sanders? Because here's the truth, you don't say something like that without knowing what it implies. Shadur Sanders, son of NFL legend Deion, has been buried in that entertainer label by critics ever since he stepped onto a college field. The flashy watches, the cameras, the viral pregame clips, the swagger, it's all part of the primetime legacy. Some love it, others hate it.
All of it. I thought it was a clear shot at Shedeur due to the fact that his Oregon coach threw a shot at Coach Prime and Shedeur during their meeting at Colorado last year. But you know what? The cream rises to the top. Let's see what happens this week. I see a lot of the media talking about they think it was about the media and not about Shedeur.
But what you don't do is pretend you weren't aware of it when you speak publicly. And the timing? Worse than terrible. Gabriel had just thrown a pick six, fumbled on a botched handoff, and somehow believed he was in position to comment on anyone else's spotlight. So whether he meant it or not, the damage was immediate. The quote went viral. Reactions started pouring in. But one voice stood above the rest, loud, surgical, and ready to pounce with zero mercy. Stephen A. Smith heard that line and didn't just take offense. He treated it like an invitation, because the second you casually throw shots at a quarterback carrying more media attention, cultural weight, and pressure than anyone else in the game, you've officially stepped into the lion's den. And Stephen A. Smith, he was ready to bite. Stephen A. Smith isn't known for keeping things subtle, but what he did next wasn't a response. It was a televised execution. The second Gabriel's quote hit the airwaves, Stephen A. locked in like a lion catching the scent of blood. No rehearsals, no soft landings, just pure, unfiltered disrespect surgery.
The comparisons were emanating from the media more so than anybody else. And that's what I think, that's exactly who I think he was directing his comments towards. Having said that, Dillon Gabriel, respectfully, it was stupid. A very dumb comment to make. First of all, let me tell you something right now. In every walk of life, far beyond the parameters of a football field.
He didn't just clap back. He ripped the smile off Dillon Gabriel's reputation piece by piece until there was nothing left but stats and silence. 1 minute, Gabriel was trying to play alpha. The next, Stephen A. had him laid out like a busted playbook. You had a pick, 6, a fumble, and you thought it was smart to talk about entertainers and competitors? Shadur Sanders didn't even throw shade, you gave it to him. That's the thing about going after someone like Shedeur. If you're not ready to handle the weight of that name in public, you better keep it out your mouth. Because once you even hint at disrespect, the entire media machine is watching, and Stephen A. is at the front, loaded with receipts. He called out Gabriel's spotty game record, his lack of cultural presence, his habit of jumping programs, and worst of all, the crippling irony of it all. Here's a quarterback who's barely made noise outside the stat sheet, trying to downplay someone who is the conversation.
Who produce get treated differently than those who don't. What he said echoes the mentality of all of America practically, and most certainly the world, as we see things being globalized more and more every day. It was a stupid, idiotic, immature comment because clearly you were feeling the heat because a lot of people was talking about how Shedeur should be cute.
Stephen A. didn't need to get loud, but of course he did. That's what makes it worse. Because when he gets loud, it's controlled, calculated, devastating. Gabriel's biggest headline? Switching schools. Shadur's biggest headline? Reviving Colorado football in front of the nation every week. One builds a legacy, the other just updates a LinkedIn. And just like that, Gabriel wasn't the underdog people respected. He was just the latest name added to the ever-growing list of players who tried Stephen A. and lost. By the time the clip finished trending, millions had seen Gabriel get cooked all while Shedeur kept quiet, and that made the beatdown hit even harder. This wasn't just a takedown. It was a warning to everyone watching. If you come for primetime, you'd better come correct. Or Stephen A. will end the conversation before you get a second sentence off.
And seeing how the Browns react to this, how the locker room reacts to this, how Shedeur reacts to this, because it was a clear shot at Shedeur. But let's say Dillon Gabriel was talking about the media. How could you be a brand new quarterback in the NFL and the first time you get behind a mic after your first game, you throw the media under the bus? That's arrogant.
You can't talk about Shadur Sanders without talking about the spotlight because, truthfully, he never had the option to avoid it. From day one, he wasn't just another quarterback. He was primetime's son, the heir to one of the most electric personalities the NFL has ever seen. The expectations? Absolutely insane. The pressure? Nonstop. The criticism? Louder than almost anyone else at his level. But despite all of it, the cameras in his face, the doubters lurking online, the unspoken expectations of being Deion Sanders' kid Shedeur didn't fold. He leaned into the chaos. He handled it with poise, with swagger, and with a composure that makes every mistake a bigger headline than most players' best games. When Shadur throws a touchdown, he trends. When he has a slow week, analysts start debating his future. That's not just football, that's cultural weight. And for players like Dillon Gabriel, that kind of weight is hard to ignore, and even harder to accept. Because here's the brutal truth. Some quarterbacks have to beg for attention. Shedeur? He walks into the room and the cameras just follow. He's not just a passer. He's become a brand. He brings a storyline, a legacy, a generational spotlight with him wherever he goes. He's not doing this for Twitter clips. He's building something louder than stats and deeper than just wins. That's why when someone like Dillon Gabriel throws shade, it hits differently. It doesn't come off as competition, it reeks of frustration. And that's why the backlash was so immediate.
We got Dillon Gabriel out here leaking. And this is a soap opera to the fullest. Even if Shadur Sanders wasn't a superstar wherever he is, because he is certainly box office, even if he wasn't that, I still think Dillon Gabriel be like, oh, they drafted this dude behind me? I ain't gonna love this dude.
Because people see what Shedeur deals with. The double standards. The pressure to be perfect while others get a pass for inconsistency. He's held to a different level and somehow he still shows up. He's the guy who took a struggling Colorado program and put them back on the map. The guy who turns post-game interviews into viral moments without even trying. The guy who, in the middle of a media storm, remains unshaken just by being himself. And that triggers people. Especially quarterbacks who don't command the same energy. Especially ones whose names don't spark entire debate shows anytime they take the field. Especially ones like Dillon Gabriel, who just can't figure out why someone like Shedeur gets all that attention, even when they're both playing the same position. But that's the reality of it. Shedeur doesn't chase the spotlight chases him. And when you carry that kind of presence, you're going to draw envy whether you ask for it or not. That's the level Shedeur is on. And that's the level most quarterbacks will never reach, no matter how many passes they throw. On paper, Dillon Gabriel looks solid. A veteran quarterback with numbers, experience, a stat sheet long enough to raise eyebrows. But here's the raw truth. Stats don't build legends, moments do. And when you dig past the box scores, Dillon Gabriel's resume doesn't inspire fear. It raises questions. Big ones. Let's start from the top. Gabriel's been around the block UCF, Oklahoma, and now trying to claim a spot in the NFL with the Browns. That's already 3 different jerseys in less than a full college cycle. He didn't anchor himself in one program. He bounced. And while some call that adaptability, others see it for what it is, a slow zigzag down the college football food chain chasing opportunity, not dominance. Sure, he racked up touchdowns. Sure, he threw for yards. But if you actually watch the film, those highlight throws usually come against soft secondaries in low-stakes games. When the pressure's low, Gabriel shines. But once the lights get brighter, he disappears. Where's the playoff magic? Where's the nail-biter win against a top-5 team? Where's the signature tape this to the Heisman reel moment? Nowhere. And that's why his entertainer versus competitor line backfired so brutally. Because you can't throw shade from a platform you haven't earned. Shadur Sanders gets held to a different standard because he's actually built a national storyline. Gabriel? He's been serviceable, a reliable engine, not the main attraction. When Stephen A. started pulling receipts, it wasn't about malice, it was about truth. This ain't about stats. This is about control, about who moves culture, about who makes the room stop when they walk in. And Dillon Gabriel's never stopped the room. Not once. He's never been the headline, only the footnote. The guy who shows up, plays hard, maybe squeaks out a win, and quietly packs up for next week. Meanwhile, Shadur Sanders is on every marquee, every segment. Even when he isn't throwing a single pass, he has the whole media world reacting to what socks he wore before the game. That's what Gabriel doesn't have, and that's what painfully exposed him when he tried to talk slick. Because the second you take shots at someone bigger than your resume, people will start looking at your record a lot differently. And once that spotlight hit Dillon Gabriel, it didn't highlight greatness. It exposed a resume that looked a lot better in silence than it did under fire. Stephen A. didn't just roast his words. He roasted the illusion. And once that illusion cracks, the reputation crumbles with it. Let's get one thing straight. Dillon Gabriel didn't get roasted just for his comment. He got roasted because that comment triggered something way bigger than football. When he said, "There are entertainers, and there are competitors," it might have sounded like a simple mindset moment, a harmless soundbite. But in reality, that sentence carried unspoken weight. Because whether he meant it that way or not, Gabriel's words touched a nerve that's been pressed for decades. See, the entertainer versus competitor line isn't new. It's a quiet echo that Black athletes have heard for generations. Covered in personality, you're a showman. You don't care enough. Voicing confidence? You're cocky, not humble. Bringing flair to the field? You're more interested in attention than winning. But when someone else celebrates, dances, or shows passion, that's leadership. That's fire. That's competing. So when Gabriel, a white quarterback, steps up after a rough performance and frames himself as the competitor, while someone like Shadur Sanders, who's been grinding under the largest spotlight imaginable, is the silent entertainer, yeah, people heard that loud and clear. And Stephen A. Smith? He's been watching this movie for too long. He knew what was really being said, and more importantly, what it represented. "Let's not act like we don't know what this is," he said on air. "This isn't about football. This is about a confident black quarterback who people love to see fail because he doesn't give them what they expect. Silence, thank yous, and staying in his lane." That's why Stephen A. didn't just respond to a quote. He responded to a pattern. Because Shedeur hasn't just been playing quarterback, he's been navigating a football world that still struggles to fully embrace confident black leaders unless they come with a perfect smile and non-threatening energy. And the irony? Shadur is more focused, more competitive, and more controlled than most quarterbacks his age. He has the swagger and the substance. But some people just can't see past the jewelry, the social media presence, or his last name. Gabriel may not have meant harm, but that doesn't erase what the comment evoked. It sounded like a player tired of seeing someone shine unapologetically, someone who commands headlines effortlessly. That's why Stephen A. went nuclear. Because this wasn't just a QB misunderstanding. It was a cultural flashpoint, and Gabriel walked right into it. Whether he knew it or not, Dillon Gabriel tapped into something bigger than football. And the blowback wasn't just about shading Shedeur. It was about daring to question why he shines in the first place. In the middle of all the chaos, from the mic drop moment to the national media frenzy, one person didn't say a single word. Shadur Sanders. No tweets. No press conference response. No public shade. And that silence? It was louder than anything Dillon Gabriel said. Because the truth is, when you're really that guy, you don't need to fire back at every shot. You don't need to explain your name, your presence, or your position. The culture already knows. The silence speaks for itself. While Dillon Gabriel was clarifying his entertainer versus competitor, quote, trying to walk it back, soften the tone, make it seem like it wasn't about Shedeur, the internet had already made its decision. Stephen A. had already brought the hammer down. And Shedeur? He just kept working. Head down. Locked in. And that stunned everybody. Because in a social media world where clout is currency and reactions come fast, silence means power, especially when the spotlight's already on you. Shedeur had nothing to prove because he already is the storyline. That's what Dillon Gabriel never understood. Most players struggle their entire careers to get even a fraction of that attention. Gabriel's step into the spotlight came with a pick six and a post-game jab. Shedeur's spotlight? That's been earned through blockbuster plays, leadership through adversity, and being the face of a total program rebuild. Colorado was irrelevant before Shadur showed up. Now? Every time he's on the field, it's prime time. Literally. That level of impact doesn't just come from stats, it comes from presence. And when you have that kind of presence, you don't flinch when someone takes a shot. You don't argue. You let everybody else do the talking. Which is exactly what Shadur did. Stephen A. went scorched earth on Gabriel. Fans swarmed social media with side-by-side comparisons. Other analysts weighed in. Comment sections exploded. And Shadur? He just kept preparing for the next snap, knowing the scoreboard and the internet spoke volumes without him lifting a finger. It's why the entire moment flipped. What started as Gabriel's time to shine his moment to establish credibility as the fresh NFL rookie turned into a viral disaster. The only thing people remembered about his debut was the mistake he made with his mouth, not the plays he made with his arm. Meanwhile, Shadur didn't even touch a mic, and somehow walked away with more respect, more publicity, and more momentum. That's the kind of win you can't fake. It's what separates the players chasing viral clips from the ones who are the moment, even when they're silent. And make no mistake, Shadur's silence wasn't passive, it was strategic. Because he's been in this game long enough to know every single thing he says gets twisted, clipped, and reshared. He knows that being Deion Sanders' son comes with one of the loudest microphones in sports. And he's smart enough to know that when someone else tries to drag you into the mud, responding can make it worse. Sometimes the best response is no response at all. Because here's the truth, no one wants to say out loud. Dillon Gabriel needed Shadur to validate his moment. He needed to name drop without name dropping. He needed a narrative push, a little gasoline to spark up some attention. But when Shadur chose not to answer, the story didn't collapse, it expanded. Because now, instead of a petty back and forth, we got to see the full spectrum. One quarterback scrambling to fix a media mess of his own making. The other quarterback letting the silence flex harder than any stat line ever could. It's what happens when you step into the spotlight thinking you're the main character and forget you're standing next to someone who already is. Shedur's W didn't come from a clapback or a headline. It came from self-awareness at the highest level, the kind you only develop when you've been under fire, in front of cameras, with the whole world hoping you'll slip. And he didn't. He's made for this. And that's what burned even more for Dillon Gabriel. You could feel it in the energy Gabriel tried to spark a debate, and accidentally submitted himself for a legacy roast. And in the end, Shadur Sanders walked away untouched. His name got bigger, his brand got stronger, and he didn't have to move a single muscle to do it. Now, that is box office. Because real power, the kind you can't name or fake or manufacture with interviews, it's quiet, it's poised, and it's waiting for moments like this to remind everyone who runs the room. Shadur didn't speak, he didn't react, he just kept moving. And somehow, that silence became the loudest victory of all. Every athlete, every rookie, every locker room player grinding for spotlight, listen up. Because what just happened between Dillon Gabriel and Shadur Sanders? That wasn't just drama. It was a televised masterclass in how clout chasing can backfire, and how presence, real, earned, undeniable presence will always rise above noise. This wasn't about stat sheets. It wasn't about one bad throw or one great drive. It was about a moment, a slip of the tongue, a comment that should have been brushed aside but instead revealed the truth about sports in the spotlight era. Gabriel said something he probably thought was harmless, confident even. There are entertainers, and there are competitors. But what that revealed wasn't just a media line. It was a mindset, the wrong one. Because here's the deal, that every player has to understand. In 2025, your story matters as much as your stats. People don't just follow athletes anymore. They follow narratives, energy, brand. They invest in how you carry yourself. They don't care that you threw for 250 yards if nobody remembers it the next morning. They care that you owned the moment, that when the pressure hit, you didn't flinch, that when the lights came on, you didn't just show up, you shifted the entire energy in the room. And that's where Dillon Gabriel failed. Not because his numbers are trash, they're not, and not because he's a bad player, he isn't, but because in a crucial moment, he tried to elevate himself by shading someone else. And that someone else just happens to be one of the most culturally relevant players in football. That's the biggest lesson in all of this. The illusion of confidence will always get exposed when the spotlight hits. Gabriel walked into that interview still riding the nerves of a shaky game, trying to reassert his image, but the way he did it, by indirectly throwing another quarterback under the bus, that's not how you build respect. Shedeur, on the other hand, showed young players the blueprint. He didn't respond. He didn't throw a tweet. He didn't hop on a podcast or beg for his name to trend. He let the moment speak for itself. And because of that, his stock skyrocketed not off performance, but off poise, off maturity, off narrative control. That's real power in this era of sports. Not yelling louder, not clapping back harder, not creating drama, just knowing your value and letting the world see it unfold. Let's not get it twisted here. Everyone wants to be Shedeur. They want the attention, the camera clicks, the debate shows, the pre-game clips going viral. But not everyone understands what it costs to earn that kind of energy, or how fast it turns on you if you fake it. You don't get to become box office because you proclaim it. You become box office because when the world watches, you don't flinch. And right now, Shedeur is that guy. Not because he's flawless, but because even when he stumbles, he owns the moment. He keeps the story moving, he doesn't panic, he doesn't reach. Dillon Gabriel's mistake wasn't just a line, it was a window into a playbook every young athlete needs to burn. Trying to shade your way into respect never works. Trying to tear down another brand doesn't boost yours. And trying to talk like a franchise leader when you haven't even secured a starting spot? That's a recipe for exactly what Stephen A. gave him, a roast with no refund. Here's the cold reality. In this media landscape, reputation travels faster than performance. And now, for better or worse, Gabriel's name will forever be attached to this viral crash and burn moment. Meanwhile, Shadur? He just quietly walked past all of it with his stock climbing higher than ever. The real takeaway? Let your game talk, and let your silence scare people. Because when you've truly got something to say, You won't need to raise your voice. You won't have to throw shade. You won't be scrambling to edit your words after the game. The moment will carry your name whether you're speaking or not. And that's the level every young player should be chasing. Dillon Gabriel reached for a legacy he hadn't earned yet. Shadur Sanders? He's still writing his and doing it without breaking a sweat. So if you're looking for a lesson from this whole saga, here it is. Don't waste your moment trying to look bigger than your game. Don't use someone else's shine to illuminate your shadows. Because in this new era, the culture remembers everything. And when it's all said and done, one question separates the noise from the icons. Did you force the world to remember you, or did you just hope they wouldn't forget?